Yeah, if they make those mistakes, they do. I think we can break up the intelligence community a little bit. I mean, to think about it, Sherman Kent, who was one of the original CIA analysts, Central Intelligence Agency intelligence analyst, and sort of the father of analytical intelligence in the United States, wrote about how the CIA's incentive, in large parts, is to be right. And they need to serve the president, and they need to get along with their political masters. But in the long term, they do have an incentive, at least a strong incentive, which competes with other incentives, to be correct. And therefore, I think, is the reason that, at least if you look back at big intelligence failures in the United States, like where we overestimated threats, like the missile gap back in the Cold War, and before that, the bomber gap, the CIA was closer to being right than the military intelligence agencies, particularly the Air Force intelligence agencies, which in those days was very tied to the Air Force leadership, which wanted an alarmist view of the missile threat from the Soviet Union so that they could buy more of their own missiles, and before that the bomber threat so they could buy more of their own bombers. So the incentive structures are a little bit different. The CIA is not certainly immune from political pressures and have made mistakes as a result. And they were still wrong, by the way, about the missile crisis. They were just closer to being right than the Air Force intelligence or military intelligence. So,
and is that part of the problem when you have the entity that is doing the threat assessment also the one that would be doing the activities responding to the threat? So there's sort of a built-in conflict of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our information about national security in general comes from the providers of national security. It's not provided by the market. It's not like, if you want to find out if you need a new car, you don't get that information from the person selling you a car. You don't want to go to the car dealer and ask about that, right? You want to find out about your options about cars from car dealers. But in national security, because of the nature of it, because it's hard to get information about what's going on in Waziristan or where missiles are deployed in North Korea, the government does that. But and this particular part of the government. But it's a little bit unfortunate that the same people, or at least the people who work for those people, that are receiving the funds from the taxpayers for national security are the ones telling us about the threats. It's not sort of an ideal situation, but it does lead you to one idea that can help a little bit, which is a sort of a pluralism in intelligence assessments. I think one of the big failings we had prior to the war in Iraq was the centralization of intelligence estimates. So we had a national intelligence estimate, and in the national intelligence estimate that was historically and famously wrong about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction capability, in that report you had footnotes that had sort of partial dissents, but that all got papered over, and the more it got elevated into a central, from the different intelligence estimates into the one document, and from the one document into the executive summary, the points of disagreement get cut out. But I think often in life you learn more about whatever it is you're trying to learn about from conflicts, from conflicting presentations, which is one reason we have juries in criminal trials get a case from two sides. And so there's a virtue, I think, in not centralizing our analysis and not centralizing the national security apparatus through jointness and all these other sort of celebrations of centralization we hear about so much, and instead encouraging fights